Okay, if you want to speak away already a little bit and tell people about what it is that you work on, take us all the way to the deep end, and how can people help?
Sure. So it's not if, it's when, right? Because so of course we discussed a lot about the longevity space, which I would by at least by value proposition I would count myself to that group. But as Alison just said, I'm slightly more on the extreme side of things. So I'm working on human cryopreservation. Of course, the reason is I very much hope that I will never need to use that, right? So I'm very much that hope that all the panelists before me are significant I am, and that at some point there will be just a pill or a treatment or whatever it might be, and all these biomarkers are very predictive, and then I can do something about whatever I need to change to live significantly longer. But if that's not the case, and that's of course my position, and I'm willing to take any bet. If anybody wants to bet on any time frame, 2045 or whatever it is, if anybody is confident at that point we will have any significant increase in maximum lifespan, then I'm very happy to take the other side. So let's assume this does not turn out to be the case, right? Or anybody gets diagnosed with some terminal disease before that, or gets hit by a truck or by a car or whatever it might be, then, and always under the assumption, of course, that someone is interested in living longer than currently possible, then cryopreservation might become in, right? And this fundamentally, of course, is the idea that, what makes me is my connections in my brain. What makes each of you is your connections in your brain. And then, of course, it's a bit more complex, but kind of in a simplified manner. And as long as you keep that structure around with relatively high fidelity, with relatively high quality, that then in the future, at some point, it's fundamentally possible that just as you will currently revive someone after they had stop of circulation, right? So like heart attack or whatever, just how you do CPR, there would be some type of very advanced CPR, or however you want to call that, as a method to revive someone at a time when at that point then people can live significantly longer. So that's what I'm doing. I'm running one non-profit research foundation in Switzerland for that space that also builds a storage facility and research institute where the research will be done. And then one operative day-to-day organization based in Berlin that people can sign up with, where there's multiple medical teams and doctors and so on who do that procedure should someone die unforeseeably or when they're old. Doesn't really matter when you die, but then you would be cryopreserved and kept in cryopreservation for as long as it might take until revival is possible. So this is what we're doing.
Who here sign up to CryoNext? Okay, a few.
Almost all are.
Customers here to
No, absolutely.
Yeah, I should say Emil was one of our accelerator projects in this year, and he's now been taking it, I think, upon himself to sponsor the next round of our fellowship and actually sponsor fellowship in biostasis. And so we already have Swaning as Valeria, so a really fantastic person who was signed up to our Spire fellowship, but we had one more space. But you guys are working in the field and one funding and actually research in that area and fellowship to go. But Alex is also joining us as a 2022 Fonsite Fellow. And Alex, we found very difficult part, which involved me going through lots of different Russian-speaking websites, because Irina Konvoy and her husband did this amazing studies on plasma dilution, which then you and a few others took upon yourself to not only recreate, but then also to take a few steps further. And that is only a very small fraction of what you do. You're also creating a new hallmark for aging and so forth. So I will put up your technology tree. Tell us a little bit, Alex, what it is that you're working on, and I'm really, really happy to have you here.
Hello, everyone. I'm Alexander, and I'm representing here the community of scientists and biohackers with a self-explanatory name, Group for Radical Life Extension. And our aim is to bring radical life extension as soon as possible to reality. And for that purpose, we basically study on ourselves and also in laboratory on animals, but also on volunteers, different interventions, and develop new breakthrough technologies as well. So the ultimate goal our ultimate goal is to deal with two things, or like with actually one big thing that we think is an ultimate cause of aging. It is the damage to long-living macromolecules. And I have written a paper in collaboration with Professor Moskolov on that, and we think that it is a missing 10th hallmark of aging. As you probably know, in our bodies exist long-living proteins. Probably you know that collagen is one of such proteins, and also there is elastin. And collagen, for instance, lifespan of collagen ranges from 15 years in skin to more than hundreds of years in cartilage. And this makes the collagen very, very susceptible to non-enzymatic damage. What does it mean, non-enzymatic damage? Throughout our body circulate lots of molecules. Some of them are quite reactive, and it's surprising, but glucose actually and other producing sugars are very reactive. Reactive means that they interact with proteins, and especially collagen, and literally stitch the collagen strands together. And this has several consequences. First, the collagen becomes stiffer with age, and it leads to, so the stem cells, in a way, they do not like stiff environment. And many of stem cells in our bodies, in this stiff environment, they experience accelerated aging, they stop dividing, and this causes systemic problems. Another consequence of glycation of this cross-linking stitching collagen strands is that collagen becomes more resistant to enzymatic digestion. It would be just a funny scientific fact if we do not test it in a study. So scientists created mice that have a single very tiny mutation in collagen gene, which makes this collagen less susceptible to degradation by collagenases. And guess what? These mice lived more than 2 times less than wild type mice. They experienced signs of accelerated aging, osteoporosis, kyphosis, hypertension, you name it. So it means that only this resistance to enzymatic degradations may alone cause aging or aging-like condition. And this is exactly what happens in our bodies. Like if you take samples of skin and inoculate them in enzymes like collagenase, then the time to digest these samples grows linearly with the chronological age of a subject, and the correlation of this digestion time with age is remarkable. It's I would guess it's the same as for famous Horvath's epigenetic log. Yeah, so this is an extremely important problem, how to make our collagen soluble, digestible again. And for that purpose, we can do multiple things. First, we can try to break up the crosslinks that we have. And for that purpose, we can also go with several methods, several ways. First, we can develop an enzyme, and I know companies that are already doing that. But this approach has difficulties because enzymes are typically quite large molecules, and they might not fit into the matrix deep between the collagen strands, which are already cross-linked and tied together. So another approach would be to screen small molecules that can fit in between the collagen strands and break up the chemical bonds which tie collagen strands together. but the space of small molecules is vast, and we do not have time to screen and synthesize all the compounds in the universe to find those who can break up this non-enzymatic crosslinks.
Number 3.
Yes. The number 2 is and we can use several technologies to enable this. And one is we can utilize in silico screening. We can use computational powers to do that. One enabling technology is computational quantum chemistry, like computational chemistry. So we can model the interaction of small molecule with a crosslink and predict whether the small molecule actually destroys the chemical bond. And then we can, but this is solving the Schrödinger equation is not the simplest thing in the world. It requires a lot of computational resources. So we can tremendously speed up things by bringing machine learning here. So we can try to predict, given this set of data, about which molecules destroy links or crosslinks, which molecules do not destroy. And we can feed it into the machine learning model, maybe some generative neural network or something like that. And then it can predict new molecule candidates. And thus we can do in silico screening much faster. So this is one of the approaches that we have in mind and we are trying to develop. And the third way is to basically speed up the turnover of the collagen. So to make it to make it the lifespan of collagen smaller, and then it won't accumulate as much damage as it accumulates now. And for that purpose, we need gene delivery, gene therapy. We need to genetically modify fibroblasts, our maybe other cells, maybe immune cells in our bodies, to speed up the turnover of collagen without detrimental effects. And we are working on this technology, yes, as well. So I'm probably talking too much.
Challenges that you cut out here. Thank you. So I think that for everyone, especially in the ML space, I think that's a good target for you guys, and perhaps also to tackle. Thank you so much. That's the next one. We have Nora, and Nora we hunted down through a few of our advisors in Europe, and they're just like, please look. And then we were trying. We were courting you for weeks. So I'm so glad that you accepted to become a 2022 fellow. Your presentations, like the way that you are able to explain the science that you work on, is really just fantastic. And I think nothing even compared to what you're working on. So I'm really looking forward to you sharing a little bit what it is that you're working on and how it is that other fields can perhaps help you move on further.
Thanks, Alison. Thank you. Nice to be here, Guy. This is my first time here. Great to hear everyone. Really interesting to see all the different ideas coming through. But to give you a little bit about what we do. So we're a group of individuals, probably mad, I would guess, a mixture of pure mathematicians, computer scientists, physicians, physicists, microbiologists, biologists of all types. And really our belief at core is that we can prolong our health forever. We can be healthy forever. That's really the core of our belief. And we believe that nature around us has invented a lot of those solutions. Species that live forever exist already, both on Earth and in the marine world. Species that don't get cancer, species that can combat inflammation, species that can auto-repair. Those fundamental things that are key to curing disease, preventing disease, and staying healthy forever is already in nature. But we as humans have not explored that. And my background came from initially pure mathematics, computer science. Then I went into the whole area of life science. And that was the first initiation of at least the understanding of, well, how can we data mine all that knowledge that exists within nature and attach it to some benefit within human. So on the one side, you have that nature has a solution, we believe, to everything. It's just that we have not explored it the right way. And then on the other side, if you look at us as humans, what's interesting about us is that we literally walk into disease, which is crazy. With all the technologies around us, with everything, you know, we're going to the moon, the Mars, and we literally are, as a species, walking into disease with no understanding of how can we actually prevent disease, because a lot of it, like I said, even today is preventable, and with time, a lot more would be. So we walk into disease and start medication, and once you're on that slippery slope, it's very, very hard to come back. And we see humans or aging or any types of diseases as you accumulate with age as basically a tune. So we see humans as a tune, like a music, and each individual will have their own music. And as you start declining from your prime years, start declining with age, that music changes. And what we're trying to see, what notes are changing? How do we bring those notes back to, you know, the same tune you had when you were younger? So I'll give you an example, a concrete example. One example is muscle atrophy or dystrophy or sarcopenia as we age. So it's a big, big problem that we all literally suffer from. We lose muscle with age. Our cells in our bodies start decaying, and we don't perform as well as we age. And it starts really early, from our 20s, end of our 20s, beginning of 30s. And it's a problem we all suffer from, but yet, you know, we obviously some people try, we exercise, we eat well, etc. But it's a problem that we all have. And it's not a one singular problem, because muscle aging is a very complex area. It's many, many different pathways interacting. And the question is, well, how can we go after that area? Because a lot of the therapies today don't really work. They don't really bring you back to your prime. So we looked at sarcopenia as three groups, so three bins. One is inflammation. So what is that tune that changes? What are the things what are the notes within that tune that changes the most with sarcopenia? One of them is the bucket of inflammation. There's a huge increase in inflammation, especially certain biomarkers within the inflammation area, certain interleukins. And then separately, you have muscle decay. So you have protein breakdown. That whole machinery is kind of, a lot of it is broken up as well. And then protein synthesis, which is the other bucket. So three major buckets that really influence your whole muscle. And what we said, well, you can't go after just one of those, because a lot of therapies go after one target. But to prevent something, you can't prevent by pushing on one target. You have to really, it's a whole tune. You're trying to take that tune back to where it was. So what we did is say, well, okay, so in the inflammation arena, what are the interleukins that we want to go after, and how do we want to modulate them back to where they should be? Same with muscle breakdown, same with muscle synthesis. And we created a network of peptides. So we're focused on peptides. These are short proteins. So we created a network of peptides, a combination of different peptides targeting all those different pathways at the specific targets to bring the tune back to where it was. We've done a lot of research, both from a lab perspective. So we identify those molecules in nature. And it's funny when I tell you where we found them in fava bean, from all things. So fava bean contained a network of peptides that if you eat the fava bean, obviously it degrades, you don't get those benefits. But by us identifying those molecules within fava bean, unlocking them from the fava bean, targeting all these networks, we then went into the lab, produced it, tested it on cells initially, obviously into animals, and now into humans. We have 2 clinicals that were successful, and we're going into a 3rd one now, showing that, so the different markers we looked at is basically we took biopsies of muscle, we looked at muscle synthesis, we looked at muscle breakdown, we looked at strength, because ultimately at the end of the day, the thing you're trying to maintain ultimately is your strength, and different other measures we've made as well. So the funny thing is that, like I come back to it, is that nature really holds the solution to a lot of what we're trying to do, whether we're trying to extend our health, live forever, or just avoid certain types of diseases. We as humans have not explored it, bringing different technologies together, and we're bringing loads of different technologies together, we now can explore nature better, identify molecules within them that are there for hundreds of millions of years, doing the job they actually were born to do, or at least evolved to do within that species, and taking them for the benefits of humans. And I think ultimately we're looking at it in a group perspective. So we're still at the group level, meaning that, sarcopenia, certain types of individuals. We're solving also metabolism. So glucose metabolism is one. We're working heavily on collagen and elastin production as well. We're working on sleep problems. We're working on gut modulation problems. So loads of different areas that all interconnect with, at the end, with human health and as a goal. And ultimately, as a company, we want to avoid just walking into disease. We want to be able to, based on someone's music, like I said, someone's music on their prime, trying to shift those tones back to their nature. So it's more of obviously a precision medicine approach that we're going towards. We're still at the group level, obviously. We haven't gotten to the individual level yet, but that's our ultimate goal as well. So I think I'll stop there for now.
Wow.
Thank you.
Fantastic. I love that. I love that music analogy, and I didn't promise much about your science communication, I think. Okay, thank you. So we have a great biotech, I think, site here, and I think here we have someone who's really focused fantastically on the brain. So perhaps give us a little bit of an understanding, Marina, on what you're working on. I'm really happy you came on as a fellow after having been one of the finalists in the recent longevity hackathon that I was a judge at. So welcome to Foresight, and tell us a bit more about what it is that you work on.
Thank you. So this was quite a surprise for me. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I come from the medicine. Actually, I was trying to treat dementia as a doctor. And very early I realized that whatever I prescribe, nothing works. And this is not something that you are aiming to do when you learn in medicine. You're learning to help people. And here, you don't really help. So there was one point in my practice when one of the patients went into the end stage of dementia, she fell asleep and she would not wake up. And I came to her treating doctor and asked, okay, what do we do with this patient? Maybe we will infuse some parenteral treatment to her, some proteins. And she told me, what for? Would we prolong her body life for another month or so? And that was a trigger that actually pushed me to move to research. I was working a bit on the drug discovery for Alzheimer's disease. And this is one of the biggest issues that you're guys dealing with. And this is the challenge that I want you to solve. But after a while, I moved more to the diagnostic space. And now we are working on the classification of different dementia subtypes and hopefully predicting dementia onset early on. You were very correct. The degenerative diseases start about 20 years before we see the symptoms. But currently, the way we diagnose dementia is the following. So the patients would get a few symptoms, and they would wait for years until they become clinically really severe, so that they get diagnosed. And then they come to the doctor, they get some cognitive tests, they get neuroimaging, they get their diagnosis, but there is, again, no help. So what I'm trying to understand is how we can actually change this and scale it to help the whole population start dealing with dementia early on. For this, we would need several technologies. Basically, something that is not there yet is some scalable omics approaches. I'm a big fan of proteomics just because I was working in the lab. But probably there are other omics which are relevant. There is some promise to have this scalable neuroimaging. I'm curious whether it's feasible technologically. So if there is someone working on those scalable scanners, it seems to bring a big promise, basically to make it widely available for the whole population. And then, of course, to make it happen, we need longitudinal studies, and we basically need to apply already existing methods, already existing findings, to test them in the prospective cohorts. So to understand whether they are really applicable, and whether like the studies that we do in our cohort would translate to cohorts in the US or somewhere in Asia, for example. So these are the technologies that we are still needing to make that happen. But I think that the ultimate goal of our research and of many of our lives, our jobs here, is to have the world without these diseases of aging. For me particularly, dementia is the one that I would love to cure. And what I learned this morning is that we actually also need to impact the society, to make the society ready to accept those changes. And I think that this is also something which seems to be like superficial, but our society is still not ready to go to those early testings, to know the risks. And actually, we already have, as you said, Nicolina, that we already have some tools which would help us to prevent or postpone the onset of dementia. So like even speaking two languages actively would postpone the onset by 5 years. Then it will be faster though, like the patients would not live longer, but they would live less time with the disease. And these are the questions that bother me now. I'm trying to tackle some of them, and I'm looking forward to speak to people who are also in this field.
Yeah, the side. All right. Do we have a person? Yes, Philip.
I'd like to invite you guys to engage in a little thought experiment with me. So let's say that we're successful and we can actually find a technology that makes us live forever. Okay, so what would be the consequences of that for humanity at large? I think we all agree that, you know, at an individual level, we would all like to live longer and healthier lives. But if we get there, what does that mean? So what does it mean, for example, for population growth? What does it mean for demographic changes? What does it mean for inequality? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, maybe one at a time here.
Sure. I mean, do you really mean indefinite lifespan or just significantly longer?
I guess the implications would be similar.
Yeah, sure. Let's say 1,000 years, right? Right. So significantly longer. So I think humanity has undergone significant changes in the past as well, right? Where society changed fundamentally, and probably this would be very similar, right? I mean, our life would not work as it does right now when you live 1,000 years, right? But then again, you know, birth rates are already going down, right? So I don't think this would. So I think it's very difficult to predict in detail what it would do. But I think by and large, it would not be a catastrophic change, right? I think I can very much imagine that. I think your career path would just be significantly different. You would work longer, and you might change careers significantly. And what's also very important to note, of course, is you don't have these effects directly, right? Because you don't have all these 1,000-year-olds it takes 1,000 years until you have a 1,000-year-old, right? So at that point, society will anyway have changed so fundamentally, not due to the fact that everybody lives longer, but just by normal technological progress, right? So I think it's very difficult to predict, but I think all the dystopian scenarios that sometimes people make up from saying, hey, this would totally destroy societal cohesion and so on, this stuff is anyway happening with technological progress, right? So I think people living significantly longer has no effect on if we're ending up in a dystopian future or a utopian future. And I very much believe we're ending up in a utopian, or higher probability on the utopian side than a dystopian side.
I totally agree with these words. So I think that,
Surprised.
yeah, I think that there's already a trend that if people live longer, they like produce less progeny, or like the birth rate slows down, and so we are like in developed countries we have like an opposite issue. So there is like underpopulation, the threat, global threat. But speaking about like if we have like significant lifespan extension, and basically you need to understand that if we freeze the aging, for instance, at level of 20-year-old men or women or like you name it, if you freeze aging at this age, then the expected lifespan, given the extrinsic mortality, is more than 1,000 years. And moreover, if you do not age, and if you like live for 1,000 years, you have your expected lifespan at this age is also 1,000 years. So in contrast to like if you live to 100 years, your expected lifespan is like a couple of years only. So this basically you can name it. You can like it is equal to like immortality. Like they're very similar. And given so many years ahead, you can go whatever you want. And for instance, you go to space, like a space exploration, flight to stars. You know, of course you need to solve some problems like DNA damage due to radiation, like muscle wasting due to zero gravity and so on and so forth. But technology will eventually allow it, and you basically are free to do whatever you want with advanced technology.
To work for? So it's a super hard question to answer. I don't have an answer, okay? Just straightforward. I don't have an answer. I have mixed feelings about it. Our focus, the team and myself, is not so much on living forever. It's really focused on because as we stand today, we are living most of our lives in sickness, okay? So it's about really extending our health span as much as we can. That's really the focus. And if you look at us today, again, it's a global aging population, it's a growing population. So we're all living already in this number, but being sick. So you know, a lot of trillions of dollars are spent on trying to cure people. Those trillions of dollars could be spent in other places like climate change or others. So our goal is really to kind of extend that health span as much as we can. And also, I think the other thing as a consequence is that as we use nature better, so let's go back to that example of sarcopenia with the network of peptides within a fava bean, or metabolism with the network of peptide that we found in pea, actually the vegetable as well. So those molecules that have been dormant in nature for hundreds of millions of years, and we have not used as humans, I think that's not sustainable either, because when we eat things, and this is something else that I haven't discussed, but when people eat plants or any source material, we're only using a very small portion of what's there. So if you think about it, that's not very sustainable for the planet. We're only using, as we eat it, we're breaking it up into sometimes nutrients, which is interesting, but we're losing a lot of what's there already. But by identifying things within that we're losing and making them more available to humans, we're actually using plants or other sources to the next level. So I think that's also more sustainable for the planet as well. But again, to come back to your question, I have mixed feelings about it too, and I'm focused on health.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you so much, guys. And this is, of course, a difficult question. I think that actually there is, for example, Andrew Scott, who's a great economist. He's written a bunch about the actual effects on society on this. I think that, you know, I agree with you, like the current status quo is untenable. This is really like we are living in a really sick society. So I think first we should really get around to solving this problem before we start thinking about like really the problems that like an ideal case of when we possibly ever get to the final outcome could mean. And from an existentialist perspective, really, I think that one thing that could be interesting, really, is that, look, we all are altruistic. We care about the long-term future, or at least many of us do. But I think if we want to make it easy enough for people to have long time horizons and to actually care about climate change and about all the other things that I think that a few of us like naturally care about or something, then I think just having them actually have longer time horizons for their own lives is not a bad approach. Right, so I think that you do create, like a longer time horizon for people by having them also have more skin in the game in their own survival. Okay, so with that being said, thank you so much, guys. This was a fantastic.
Thank you.